sure we've all noticed in the world that we live in today that terrible tragedies come round far more frequently. And I don't know if you agree with this, but I'd love to know your thoughts as ever in the comments below, because I think it's a bit like this. You remember when we were a lot younger, the communities were smaller. So really you only knew what was going on in your community if there was a terrible catastrophic fire, or, some sort of, the sort of thing that we read about now every single day, literally splashed across digital media. And suddenly it's forgotten about, it's wiped away, because tomorrow is another, equally bad tragedy, whether it's a stabbing, whether it's somebody, fatally injured, all that sort of stuff. And it brings me to this particular story, because a lot of people say, well, what can celebrities and in particular royalty do? And I think this story really highlights exactly the power of what they can do. And I mean this with genuineness. Of course, there's always a sad tinge to the end of this particular story, because one person does let themselves down. Let me explain. Hi, good morning, nice to see you. Thank you so much as ever in this lush green area of Kensington today. Lots of squirrels about, so if you see me jumping around, don't worry. I know, well, people say they're very friendly, and they are, they're lovely, absolutely lovely. But they're so tame in this area that, if you've got anything, or say your bag's just there or something like that, they'll climb in it. Oh yeah, they think, well, you must have something. What have you got? It's terrible, isn't it? You can hear them tutting like, oh, cheese sandwich again. Can't you think of anything better? You know what I mean? It's a strange thing, isn't it? That is the world, as I say, we live in today. Love the squirrels, though, and as ever, thank you for liking them with me. As I say, a little bit nervous. Well, we'll just see. Well, as I say, if I have to run off, you'll get the picture. Back as ever to your story of the day. Recently, I thought this was very nice, in fact, that His Majesty the King went up on a very solemn occasion up to Southport in Lancashire to visit the terrible tragedy that was the murdered very young children at that Taylor Swift dance class, And I think what's really interesting here is a lot of people were saying, and I mentioned, I think, this briefly before, what could His Majesty the King do? Well, what could anybody do other than actually turn up and offer your condolences, be there, and maybe just for a very short mirrored moment reflect on what's gone on and maybe lift your spirits. It's not every day you see His Majesty the King in that area of the country. And then what we found out was very nice, very elegantly behind the scenes, he invited family members down to Clarence House for a private meeting for tea with him and Camilla. And I thought that was just really sweet. Whichever way you look at it, it's very kind gesture to do, because they moved, everybody was moved over here, but that particularly moved His Majesty the King, the terrible murders. I love the way the mainstream media try to paint it differently. It is nothing more than murders. And then, of course, we had the beautiful pop star Taylor Swift in town doing her concerts, and very nicely, without any fanfare, this has been leaked out by the people that, of course, had the pictures taken. She invited the families and some of the children down to meet her and her mother backstage at those concerts. And again, you might say, well, what good could that do? Look, the children were delighted. It's a memory forever. It doesn't ease the pain, but it helps, and that's the problem, isn't it? What can you do? Not much. When you also reflect on our current British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, think about this. He went up to Southport literally the day after, laid a wreath, disappeared around his security, never spoke to anybody in the crowd, or indeed, to my knowledge so far, any of the families, as he invited them down to Downing Street. No. And one would say, what a terrible situation, and how tragic that you've let yourself down in such a world stage. One would suggest, would this be the same for perhaps something else? I'll leave you for that to decide, but given the current state right now, you can understand exactly how people are feeling. Keir Starmer said, didn't he, that he favoured a republic. But then when you look at what the pop star Taylor Swift has done, and of course the very much kindness of His Majesty the King, King Charles III, I think you'll understand, and I speak for many people, not just here across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the rest of the world, but I'm sure we all know who we'd prefer to be leading that sort of situation, however sad it may be. Neil Sean in the very heart of Kensington.